You built something real. People listened. Decisions moved through you. You had weight. And then something shifted. Not dramatically. Not with a clear moment you can point to. It just changed. And you are sitting here now, trying to understand why the thing you built is no longer holding the way it used to. You didn't lose it suddenly. You lost it slowly. That is not a mystery. That is a pattern. And you have been through it before. Authority does not disappear. It erodes quietly, slowly, in ways that feel like nothing at the time. You do not wake up one morning and discover it is gone. You wake up one morning and realize it has been going for a while and you missed all the signals. This is the diagnosis. You did not lose your authority because someone took it. You did not lose it because the world changed or because people betrayed you or because your situation became harder. You lost it because you stopped maintaining it. And the moment you stopped maintaining it, it began to decay. That is a law. Authority that is not maintained decays. No exceptions. Not loudly, quietly. Decay doesn't ask permission. There is a verse in Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. Guard your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. Every dimension of your life flows from what you are actively protecting inside. The moment protection becomes passive, the moment you assume instead of verify, the moment you relax instead of watch, the decay begins. Not tomorrow, now. You thought the work was done. That is the first mistake. You built structure. You established patterns. You created consistency. And it worked. You felt it working. And because it was working, you allowed yourself to believe it was stable, that it would hold on its own, that you had crossed a threshold where maintenance was no longer required at the same intensity. That belief is the beginning of the collapse. Most people never identify the moment their authority started slipping because they were too focused on what they had already built. You spend so much time looking backward at your progress that you stop watching the present condition of your structure. And structure that is not watched begins to bend. First in small ways, then in larger ones. By the time you notice the bend, it has been bending for a long time. You did not fall. You drifted. And drift feels safe. And drifting feels nothing like falling. That is why it is so dangerous. Now let us name the 3 patterns, because this is not random. This is predictable. This is how authority collapses in every case. Not in some cases, in every case. The first pattern is self-governance slipping. It starts with one exception. You have a standard, a clear line, and you cross it once. Not because you abandoned the standard, because the situation seemed to justify it. You told yourself it was a one-time deviation. You told yourself it did not count because of the context. You told yourself you would return to the standard immediately after. You did not break discipline. You weakened it. And weakened discipline cannot hold authority. And weakened discipline does not announce itself. It whispers. It accommodates. It finds new situations that seem to justify new exceptions. Each one feels small, each one feels reasonable, but each one is another millimeter of drift away from the structure that produced your authority in the first place. Drift is silent. That's why you missed it. You will not hear it. You will not feel it in the moment. You will only recognize it later, when you look back and cannot identify the exact place where the standard shifted. Because it did not shift in one place, it shifted in 20 places, each one almost invisible. This is how men and women who had genuine discipline lose it without ever making a dramatic choice to do so. They never chose to abandon self-governance. They chose one exception, then another, and each choice felt like control. That is the cruelest part. You felt like you were in control while the control was dissolving. Torah makes this explicit. The word for discipline in Hebrew, musar, carries within it the concept of binding. Authority is not a feeling. It is a structure that holds things in place. The moment you begin releasing the bindings one at a time, the structure does not immediately fall. It weakens. It loses integrity. It becomes something that looks like what it was, but cannot perform what it was designed to perform. You cannot afford to be wrong about this. One compromise, allowed and repeated, becomes your new standard, and your new standard has less authority than your original one. The second pattern is order breaking. Chaos does not ask permission. You allowed small disorder, maybe in your environment, maybe in your communication, maybe in your schedule, maybe in the way you handled decisions that used to have clear protocols. You told yourself it was temporary, that you would clean it up, that it was not that significant. Chaos never stays where you place it. It expands. It spreads. That is its nature. Small inconsistency creates space for larger inconsistency. A broken pattern in one area signals to your entire system that patterns are negotiable, and negotiable patterns lose authority, and once patterns become negotiable, they lose their power to produce the results they were producing. Look at what happened in the book of Judges. The cycle is always the same. The people maintained their alignment with the divine order. They experienced authority, protection, and expansion. Then they allowed small drift, a compromise here, an accommodation there. And what followed was not a dramatic overthrow. It was a slow erosion of every advantage they had built, until they were back at the beginning, without the authority they once carried. That cycle is not ancient history. It is your story if you are not vigilant. The small inconsistency you are tolerating right now is not small. It is a signal. It is telling your entire internal structure that inconsistency is allowed. And once your structure receives that signal, it begins adjusting to a lower standard, a standard with less authority, less weight, less power. You cannot allow disorder in small places and expect authority to remain in large ones. Order is not modular. You cannot compartmentalize chaos. What you permit in one area bleeds into every area, slowly, quietly, without asking. The third pattern is assignment drift. This one is particular. This is the one that gets people who are genuinely talented and genuinely motivated, because it happens when you are trying to do more, not less. It happens when you are expanding, not retreating. You left your lane, not because you stopped caring, because you started caring about too many things. You saw other opportunities, other directions, other ways to apply yourself. And because you had built real authority in your primary lane, you believed that authority would transfer, that the weight you had built would follow you wherever you chose to deploy it. It does not work that way. Authority is not a portable asset. It is rooted in a specific assignment, in the specific place where you have been faithful, consistent, and disciplined over time. The moment you begin distributing your attention across multiple directions without clear assignment, you dilute the thing you built. The moment you leave your lane, authority stops compounding. You diluted it, and diluted authority loses force. And here is what makes this so difficult to catch. When you begin drifting into other lanes, you do not immediately feel the loss. You feel the excitement of new territory. You feel the energy of expansion. You feel like you are growing. And in the short term, you might see some results in the new direction. But behind you, in the lane you built, the compounding has stopped. The root system is no longer being fed, and a root system that is not fed begins to retract. By the time you return to your primary lane, you find it changed. The weight is lighter. The response is slower. The momentum that felt automatic has to be rebuilt, and you do not understand why, because you never made a dramatic choice to abandon it. You just looked away for a while. Looking away is enough. This is the warning, and it must land clearly. If you do not catch where you are drifting right now, if you cannot identify which of these three patterns is currently active in your structure, you will return to where you started, not immediately, but inevitably, because the patterns do not self-correct, they accelerate. Authority does not plateau when you stop maintaining it. It decays, and decay that is not interrupted does not stay at its current level. It goes lower than lower, until one day you are building again from the bottom, wondering how someone who had what you had ended up back here. You already know the answer. You stopped maintaining it. If you cannot see where your structure is slipping right now, you will not stop it. That is not a prediction. That is a law. There is a protocol called the Vessel Inspection Protocol. It is a structured diagnostic process for examining the condition of your current authority framework, identifying where the three collapse patterns are active, and implementing the specific maintenance interventions required to stop the erosion before it becomes irreversible. This is not motivational. This is diagnostic. It is designed for people who have already built something real and are beginning to sense that something is off, even if they cannot name exactly what it is. If that is where you are, that tool exists for exactly this moment. Now let us see what the contrast looks like clearly. There was a version of you that was in alignment. Your internal structure was consistent with your external behavior. What you said matched what you did. What you decided you followed through on. The people around you felt the weight of your consistency. They responded to it. They adapted to it. Decisions moved. Resources moved. Relationships held. There was momentum that felt almost automatic. That is what alignment produces. Now look at the current state. Resistance, not dramatic opposition, quiet friction. Things that used to move easily now require more effort. People who used to respond quickly now need more convincing. Opportunities that would have materialized now stall. You feel like you are working harder to produce results that used to come more naturally, and you are starting to wonder whether the world changed, whether the strategy needs updating, whether something external shifted. Nothing external shifted. Your structure shifted. Same person, different structure, same effort, worse results. The results you are experiencing right now are an accurate reflection of the current condition of your internal order. They are not accidents. They are not bad luck. They are outputs. And if you want to change the outputs, you have to stop adjusting the external variables and start diagnosing the internal ones. You have not lost everything, but you have lost something. And what you have lost is not gone permanently. It is waiting to be rebuilt, but it will not rebuild itself, and it will not rebuild by doing more of what is visible. It will only rebuild by returning to the internal disciplines that produce the authority in the first place, and maintaining them without compromise, without exception, without drift. Let us be clear about what maintenance requires. It requires watching. Daily, deliberate attention to the condition of your structure. Not assuming, not hoping, watching. Are the standards holding? Are the patterns consistent? Are the boundaries intact? Is your primary assignment receiving your primary focus? It requires accountability to truth rather than to comfort. When you find a place where the standard has slipped, you do not rationalize it. You name it. You correct it. You do not negotiate with drift. You stop it. And it requires what the Torah calls chazak, which means strength in the active sense, not strength as a static condition, but strength as a continuous posture. Joshua was told, Chazak ve'ematz. Be strong and courageous, not once but repeatedly, because strength is not a state you reach and then maintain automatically. It is a choice that must be renewed consistently every day in the specific places where the pressure to drift is greatest. You are not weak if you have been drifting. You are human, but you do not have the luxury of remaining in the drift. The person who had authority and lost it is not in the same position as the person who never built it. You know what it feels like. You know what it requires. You have the memory of what alignment produces. That memory is not a source of shame. It is a map. It is showing you exactly where you need to return. Authority is not built once. It is maintained daily. This is not a motivational statement. This is the mechanism by which authority exists in the first place. There is no version of real authority that sustains itself without continuous maintenance. Anyone who tells you otherwise is either uninformed or selling you a fantasy. The Torah gives us 40 years of wilderness before the promised land. Not because God was withholding, because the people had to become the kind of people who could maintain what they were about to receive. Authority without the capacity to maintain it is not authority. It is borrowed time. And borrowed time has a due date. You are being asked right now, not in the future, not after another breakthrough, not when circumstances become more favorable. Right now, to look at where your structure is slipping, to name it without flinching, to stop the drift before it becomes a reversal. You didn't lose authority, you stopped protecting it. The question is not whether you built something. You did. The question is whether you are maintaining it. What you don't maintain, you are already losing. Not eventually. Now. The loss is already in progress. Somewhere in one of the three patterns, the erosion is active. And the only thing standing between where you are now and where you do not want to return is your willingness to stop drifting, to restore the standard, and to maintain it without negotiation.